The property tax is a big deal because it it's always a challenge for city treasuries to meet their budget, and to add to the property tax base is a big fiscal push. I also wanted to point out that when it's important that we use the example of Los Angeles, because when I drive around West LA, whether it be Santa Monica or the other side of the 405 and some of those sort of suburban/urban neighborhoods, you see all kinds of different density projects there, and they really haven't changed the neighborhoods. In fact, you can make the argument, which you sort of just made with respect to Kensington, that they enrich the neighborhood. More people are there, more people on the streets, but it's not super urban. It's just a little bit more urban. And the upside is a couple of things. One is you accommodate a lot more people, which is a goal here, and you do it at a lesser price, and you do it targeting a segment of our population which we are rapidly losing. And in a sense, while LA still has this, issues because you just can't build enough housing, it's at least a way to try to be responsive to that. Because what we're not doing, the elephant in the room sort of issue here is we're not developing on greenfields anymore in places like San Diego County. Now, these are policy issues, and that's another whole subject. But the reality is that for developers, greenfields are not available anymore. We used to accommodate our growth in San Diego by building out, by building master plan communities. I made a living doing feasibility studies on projects, mostly beginning with the name Rancho, that build housing in increments of 1, 2, 3, 10,000 units. We're not in that business anymore. Those developers don't exist anymore. So but yet those accommodated the same kind of demographic in their time that you're talking about today, don't they? So what we're really saying is that this is an infill solution. It's not going to solve all the world's problems. Some families don't want to live like this, but many will be quite accommodatable here. And it's not like we're coming out of the dark ages here. I mean, LA is doing it, but the whole East Coast has accommodated this kind of a market for years. The row homes, the brownstones, and so forth are ways that many people grew up perfectly fine. So that's sort of what attracts me about the solution. So having said all of that, having had this conversation, so what are we going to do next? How are you going to sort of get everybody's attention to this concept?
So I think we need to go to our policymakers because, as you know, your clients and many of the people you work with and the folks that I work with, we consider land a fixed cost, right? It's just, that's what it is, and we move forward. For policymakers, though, they decide that fixed cost. And so for them to clearly understand that they could allow families to purchase 1,000 square feet of land instead of 5,000 square feet of land, and the difference called middle income housing. And oh, by the way, that's going to go back to your property taxes. That's going to increase your services and your infrastructure. It's that virtuous cycle. And again, they don't have to, there's not a big giant cost for them to allow people to subdivide their land.
So maybe the way to do this is to start it as a demonstration project in a neighborhood.
I think so.
People can get a comfort level with the concept. And if some of these projects are built, they'll see that it hasn't destroyed neighborhoods or changed the character or the traditional character of the neighborhoods. We get sort of the bugs out of any of the policies that directed this, and then we can move on to other neighborhoods. So a demonstration project.
I agree. And the other thing too is really to allow the city and those who make decisions in the city and the bureaucracy and others to understand how some of their requirements or some of their needs affect housing prices.